Hello, and welcome back to US History and Elections. Today is the 22nd of October. We are currently exactly 2 weeks before Election Day. However, we are up to about 16 million Americans who have already voted early, in person, or by mail. And we're going to be doing a slightly different video today. We're going to be looking at a number of counties, nicknamed bellwether counties, due to their apparent ability to always somehow pick the national winner of the electoral college, and this stretches back either to the early parts of the 2000s, or some even have a streak stretching back to the 1992 election. However, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at a number of these counties to watch. So if you want to take notes, you can. I'll quickly analyze them, and I'm going to be seeing what way they may be leaning, their demographics, and what we're going to expect with some of these bellwether counties, if they're going to continue their streaks or if they're going to go against the national vote. So I just have the current 538 presidential projection at the moment. It is dead even again. Trump had a small advantage the last time I looked at this. That was about a day or two ago now. But it's back to 50-50. And again, this election is just as close as it really can be. Pretty much all the seven swing states are, minus maybe Arizona and Georgia, pretty much in play. So it's going to be really interesting to see any more information come out from early voting. There's been some interesting inferences so far, but I'm going to jump straight into our first bellwether county, and this is the one that has the longest history, or current streak, should I say, of predicting the national winner, and that is Clum County in Washington. So this is actually in the northwestern portion of Washington State, and as you can see on the map, if you know anything about Washington State, Seattle is in this Bay Area here, and pretty much most of Clum County actually encompasses Olympic National Park, one of the most beautiful national parks in the entire country. But what it has been known for is being one of the best bellwether counties, having predicted the known for being the longest record holder at the moment. It has predicted the presidential election winner every single election since Ronald Reagan's first victory in 1980. And that includes 2020, when a lot of the other bellwether counties that had so far predicted the correct presidential winner since 1980. There were 19 of them in 2020. However, all of them except Clum County voted for Donald Trump. Clum County is the only one that went to the eventual winner, Joe Biden. And you can see this on the Wikipedia page. I'm going to be looking at the Wikipedia page for all of them. And you can just see how it swings back. So 1980, solid victories, bit smaller margin in 88. Of course, during the 90s elections, we had the third party candidate of Ross Perot stealing a lot of the votes from the traditional two parties. And then a narrow win, or fairly narrow win, for Bush in both of those elections, and then again fairly narrow. Actually, 2012 it came very, very close. We were talking about 100 votes there in favor of Obama, swung back to Donald Trump narrowly, and then back to Joe Biden. But that is about a margin of about 1,600, 700 votes there. So it's an interesting state to watch. However, as this report says, this is a news article about Clum County because of its national popularity or infamy. With the Washington state as a whole being known as a solidly Democratic state in the Senate at large and also at the presidential level, it's always talked about how this is a outlier in the state of Washington and whether or not it's going to be going for the winner this time. And I actually think this is where it may lose its streak. That is, if it does vote for Kamala Harris, which it does seem like it favors at the moment. This article pretty much says that that it does have a slight Democratic lean, and the thing is, it always has a slight Democratic lean, very narrowly though. But the sort of people that live here is about 80% white, quite suburban, quite wealthy, and this is the sort of numbers that the Democratic Party has been doing increasingly well in since 2016. So it's interesting to see if Clum County does keep its record, but that is thinking that it's most likely going to be won by Harris this time round. We don't know who's going to actually win the presidential election, though. If the last 2 weeks or anything to go by, Trump is definitely putting his name into the favorability, whether it actually swings that way or, as the 538 prediction says, that it's still a dead heat. Now, I want to move over to Erie County, Pennsylvania. This is probably the bellwether county you have heard the most about, not just because it is traditionally a bellwether county for the nation at large. It is a bellwether county specifically for the state of Pennsylvania. So just a bit of background, this is again a northwestern county in Pennsylvania. It borders Lake Erie. This is the map. As you can see, there's Lake Erie. The county is on a diagonal line and borders very near to Buffalo, New York, on the other side of the state border. So this is actually a really interesting county to look at because not only has it been a swing county for decades now, actually, that's slightly misleading. I'm going to explain that in a minute. But not only has it been a swing county for about a decade now, when Trump won it, he had a swing of a huge amount of votes. You can see from the Democrats winning it under Obama in 2012 by a margin of about 20,000 votes to Donald Trump winning it by about the margin of 2,000 votes. That is a huge swing, and we saw that swing echoed out through the whole of Pennsylvania in 2016, but it narrowly swung back by about a margin of 1,500 votes in favor of Joe Biden in 2020. And pretty much the important part to this is that since 1992, the county has voted for the statewide winner in presidential elections every single time. And here was in 1992. All of these people won. The Democrats won Pennsylvania because it used to be a blue wall state, remember? They won it from 1992 through 2012. Donald Trump won it in 2016, and then it flipped back to Joe Biden narrowly. And that was pretty much echoed in the Erie County countywide vote. So it's really interesting because this is the county that the news organizations are particularly focused on. And again, we're going to be looking at this very closely. Again, there's a lot of the makeup of this county is very white working class. There's a lot of industry in this area. Of course, like its location, the city of Erie, Pennsylvania, is a particularly like docking focused, maritime cargo focused city. And it's the sort of area that Donald Trump has traditionally done very well, but he actually saw a slippage with the white, non-college educated base, which powered his 2016 election victory and continues to power him to this day. However, we saw a slippage of that in 2020, and there's some polls that suggest he may be losing those voters in favor of low propensity voters who may have typically voted Democratic but are typically minority voters. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because I'm way more convinced with this county that whoever wins this county, Erie County, I would put about a 95% certainty is going to win Pennsylvania, and pretty much 95% certainty whoever wins Pennsylvania is going to be winning the country at whole. But I want to be looking at a different few other counties, some that have a really, really long track record, and also some that are just really interesting to see where this is going to go. So Pinellas County. This is in Florida. This is in the west coast of Florida, and it was actually in the news quite recently because this was an area that supposedly Hurricane Milton was going to directly hit. It covers the Tampa, St. Pete metro area. Specifically, St. Pete is actually in it. As you can see, it's just the west side of Tampa Bay. St. Pete is just at the tip of the peninsula. And it's a really interesting county because the population has pretty much exploded. I want to see if you can see this. Actually decreased in 2010 and 2020, up to 4.6% increase. There's about 60,000 new voters in there for 2024. So I want to go down to the politics. And again, it's been seen as a bellwether county. When was the last time it got it wrong? 2000, when it voted for Al Gore where it voted for Al Gore instead of George W. Bush. Ever since then, it's followed Clum County's record of getting every single election right since 1980, Reagan's first victory. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this county votes, because this county, of course, was hit by Hurricane Milton. Of course, that wasn't actually as strong or as devastating as it was supposed to be, but there was still a lot of damage done to these West Coast Florida areas. But it's going to be really interesting because the margin of which the Democrats won this in 2020, Joe Biden won this by pretty much 1,000 votes. In 2016, the Democrats lost this by a fairly more considerable margin, 6,000 votes. but they were winning this under Obama by 30,000 plus votes. So it's clearly become an extremely competitive thing, and just because of the rightward trend in Florida as a whole in the last 8 years or so, it's going to be really interesting to see how how this St. Pete County does go. But my advice would that Kamala Harris probably loses this, but it would be close. It would be 2,000 votes, and it's. But the thing is, there's also a really interesting and important congressional race going on here. Where is it? Yeah, so Republican Anna Paulina Luna. She represents the northern part of this and most of the city of St. Pete. The more democratic parts of Pinellas are represented by the Democrat who represents the main urban areas of Tampa Bay. But the reason I want to look at this is that this 13th district is an extremely competitive district, and it has shown some polling leads there. The Democrats could have a chance to pick this up, but Florida is starting to trend red, and it's going to be interesting to see if they can. But at the presidential level, I wouldn't be too worried about this being that much of a massive indicator, because I do think it's going to flip back into the Republican column just because of the people who tend to live in these areas in Florida now. We're going to be moving on to Door County next, Wisconsin, another very, very consequential swing state this election. And 60 Minutes did a really, really good look into this county. They interviewed some of the locals there. They interviewed some of the local politicians and political parties and some of the campaign efforts going on in this county. But pretty much it's a northeastern county in Wisconsin. As you can see there, it's literally just this peninsula that sticks out. You've got Green Bay to the left, and you've got Lake Michigan to the right. And even though the rest of the counties surrounding it are pretty much reliably Republican, this county has been a big bellwether in the last 30 odd years. There we go. This is what it says. The county has voted for the winner of the presidential election every time other than 1992 since 1980. So very similar to Erie County in that regard. And as you can see, what makes this county so interesting is the margin, of course. That 2008 was a blowout win for Obama, but a fairly narrow win by about 7 points in 2012. Trump won it by about 3 points, and then Biden won it by about 1.5 points in 2020. So this is a genuine toss-up election in Door County, and I really think this is going to be ones that whoever wins this is going to be winning Wisconsin as a whole. I actually don't know. If it has voted with Wisconsin for all the elections. I would assume so, because actually maybe in 2004, I do believe John Kerry and Al Gore won Wisconsin in both those elections. But that shows that this county is probably a much more historically a much more conservative Republican county. But I believe that in the last 20 years or so, the imports of people have been typically retirees, Democratic retirees. So this is how this county has become competitive. And honestly, I have no idea who's going to be winning this. The margin is so small. It's one to really keep out for on election day. When you're going into election night, they're going to be mentioning Door County. They're going to be mentioning the votes coming out of there. And yeah, really interesting one to keep an eye on. So that's a big one to keep an eye on. I'm also going to quickly look at these two other counties. These have pretty much had a pretty good record historically, stretching back pretty much since the early 1900s. So the first one is Blaine County, Montana. This is on the northern border. I just want to quickly show you northern border. You've got Saskatchewan in Canada there, and it also has the southeastern portion has a fairly large native community. Yeah, the Fort Belknap reservation is in the southeast, around this area where I'm highlighting. And again, this is a extremely close bellwether. One of the most consistent long-term ones since 1916. The county has voted for the correct candidate pretty much every single one since, 88? 88. And actually here, it highlights that a lot of these times where voted for the Democrat in place of the Republican was during major drought years. So it kind of broke its streak in relation to a drought. I don't know if that's just causation or not correlation, but it is what it is. Something interesting to look at. But again, we're seeing a similar trend. Of course, if you voted for the correct ones. Um, yeah, so of course they voted for George Bush twice. Yeah, the last one, of course, they voted for Dukakis in '88. But this is the thing: is a very narrow margin in pretty much all of these, other than the Obama years. 2016 narrow margin by about 3%, and then in 2020 another narrow margin of about 4%. So this is another one to keep an eye on. Of course, Montana is not competitive at a statewide level, but these are just some other examples. And of course, this is a much more demographically mixed county. Let's see, it doesn't actually say. Oh, no, it does. Okay. Half American Indian, half white, and then that's pretty much the entire makeup of that county. But that shows that this is a completely different county compared to the general racial mix-up of, or ethnic mix-up, should I say, of the United States as a whole. So it's not exactly trying to find counties that mimic the generic ethnic makeup or educated makeup or religious makeup or wealth makeup of the United States as a whole. It just happens that these counties do tend to skew almost dead down the middle of the political compass, and pretty much just move with the vibes of the country as a whole, which is essentially what a presidential election is anyway. And the final one I want to look at is actually a really important one because Minnesota, of course, Tim Walz, the Democratic VP candidate's home state, the current governor of Minnesota. This is actually the western part of Minnesota. Fargo, North Dakota is literally just on this border right here. And this is part of the Fargo metro area. But again, it's a similar thing. From 1992, it is voted for the winner of the presidential election and has a pretty good record before that, either way. Even voted for Carter then. Actually, 68 got it wrong. Which other ones did it get it wrong? 60 also got it wrong. But in the last 30 years, it's been pretty much nailed on. But again, this one's actually a lot closer than some of the other ones we saw. Obama only won this by about 8 points, then Trump won it by 2, and then Biden won it by about 5 points. So we're talking about very narrow margins in every single one, 4 points, sorry. And again, the demographics of this, this is clearly a much more white area. As you can see, 94% white. Got a small percentage makeup of all the other different ethnicities. But what I'm trying to tell you is that these bellwether counties, rarely follow the ethnic makeup of America as a whole. We have a really diverse nation, and it just happens that these tend to swing either way. But it's key to watch out for these sort of counties come election day, because this is where we're going to be seeing, hopefully, if some of these counties get all their votes done early on before some of the swing states do, then we might have a much better idea of how the race is going early in election night, compared to having to wait a day, maybe a day or two in some of the states that have much more drawn out and strict electoral count processes. So it's going to be really interesting to see who's going to win, because again, I'm going to go back to 538, 50-50. This election is still a massive toss-up. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all again very soon.